This video is your one-stop guide to understand everything about DevOps, mobile app development and software engineering. Hello everyone and welcome to Scalers YouTube channel. I am Soumya, a software engineer and an educator. Today I will sketch out a detailed roadmap of 3 in-demand job profiles. Before we get into the video, make sure you check out our free masterclasses by industry-leading experts on Scalers event page. Link is in the description. Let's get into the video. The very first job profile is DevOps Engineer. So the word DevOps, it's made up of 2 words. The very first is Dev and the second one is Oops. Dev stands for development and Oops stands for operation. A DevOps engineer is responsible for doing the development as well as the operational work as well. It is combination of the best practices, tools and processes in order to increase the organization's ability to ship the product faster. It helps in, overall increasing the process of developing the software. If you look at the development part, so planning of the project, code, build, testing and after that releasing of the product, all these are part of the development cycle. And if you talk about the Oops part, that is the operations part, it is all about doing the deployment, operation and monitoring the health of the project even after the product, even after the project is shipped or released. Let's move ahead and talk about the roles and responsibility of a DevOps engineer in detail. So the very first thing is they are responsible for doing the automation stuff. As a DevOps engineer, you have to automate the repetitive task. Let's say in every release, in every ship of the product, you have to build a set of dependencies, a set of community dependencies, and that process is kind of similar. That's why as a DevOps engineer, you are supposed to know the automation tools, how Jenkins work, which is used for writing some of the pipelines, some of the jobs are written so that the repetitive task can be automated. One such example was if you have to do repetitive community builds or something in every release, you can just automate that, right? And that's how and why for a DevOps engineer it's significant that you know how these automation tools work, okay? So apart from automation, you are also responsible for managing the infrastructure as a DevOps engineer. Even after the release of the product or project, you have to monitor the health of the project. As I said in the starting, also in the introduction of the DevOps engineer role, you will be monitoring the project health, and if any bug or let's say if any crash is there, obviously as an organization you are supposed to understand the log reports, the error reports, everything before the customer faces that, right? So you have to monitor the health of the project. If you face that there is any issue, there is any difficulty, so you have to quickly troubleshoot that, you have to fix that as a DevOps engineer. That's also a significant part. Even the release is done, you have deployed, testing, everything is done, you have to continuously monitor the project so that if the customer faces any issue, if there is any crash or error something, you can instantly fix that thing. Number 4 is CI/CD. CI stands for continuous integration and CD stands for continuous delivery. So CI helps quickly to find and correct errors to improve the product's quality. That's why as a DevOps engineer, you are expected to know CI/CD, all this stuff. You should be very versed with all these tools. Let's now talk in detail about the steps. If you want to become a DevOps engineer, what are the steps that you should follow? There are about like 8 to 9 steps which you have to follow to become a DevOps engineer. Let's start with the programming language. If you are getting into the tech domain, if you are going to become app developer, DevOps engineer or any such profile you want to get into, obviously the very first thing is you have to learn a programming language. Most of the time, the DevOps engineer deal with languages like Python, Ruby, Rust, C++, even Golang is a very booming language nowadays. Depending upon the team you are in and the organization, the languages you use on day-to-day basis might vary a bit, but yes, these are overall the languages that you are supposed to know. Even let me tell you, if you have started your tech journey as a software engineer or maybe you are a beginner, you know any programming language like C++, C, Java, anything, and you are feeling that like how will you learn all these languages like Ruby, Rust, all these, don't worry about it. If you know a single language, trust me, it's very easy to shift to a new language, because obviously your programming fundamentals are clear, right? You already know how OOPs work, what classes are, for loop, while loop, all those stuff. So basics are clear. You just have to learn the syntax of a new language, and that's very easy. There are like quick tutorials as well, free videos and all available. You can quickly learn that. So now you are sorted with the first point, programming language. Don't worry if you don't know all of these, it's completely okay. If you have a basic understanding of any of the programming language, you can gradually shift to any of these, okay. Step number 2 is you should understand operating system concepts very well. If you're going in this domain, trust me, operating systems knowledge is going to play a very significant role. If, for example, even if you are from tech background, you have done some degrees like B.Tech, BCA, so in your 4th or 5th semester, these operating system concepts are core part of the syllabus. These are taught in every technical degrees, how threads and concurrency work, what are input output management, virtualization, memory storage is indeed a very significant subject, right? And how to manage file systems, what file systems are. These are core computer science subjects. So if you are coming from that background, I think understanding the operating system concepts will not be a big deal for you. Moving ahead, the very third step, and knowing how to manage servers is very mandatory. If you are into this domain of how to manage Jenkins, what is CI/CD, all those stuff, then you should indeed know how to manage server. For that, shell scripting like bash, ksh, tools like SAD, AWK, and networking commands. These networking commands are so important. You should obviously know about all these networking command and the whole process, how to manage a server. If you are going for a DevOps profile interview, then indeed these are very common questions. You might be asked how to manage server, what are these networking commands, explain with example, all those stuff, right? Then step number 4 is learning the basic networking and security concepts. How to manage the protocols. What are these protocols? HTTP, HTTPS, file transfer protocol, how SSL, TLS, all these things work. And the OSI model, if you are coming from a technical background, you would be knowing OSI is something like a high weightage question in all the exams. If network and security is part of the syllabus, then that is like 10 or 15 marks question always. What is OSI model and everything. So indeed, I mean, networking and security concept in itself is very important. Let me tell you, I have drawn the same stuff here in this diagram. We can share the link and everything. So programming languages I already covered. These are the programming language, and the same things are here as well, what I was telling on that slide, like what are the steps. So the very first we covered programming language, and after that these networking concepts, like how to manage these protocols, how to manage servers. You should know about all these protocols, their full forms, and what and where these are used. It's very normal and core concept of computer science, as well as very significant when it comes to DevOps profile, okay. And firewall, proxy, NAT, what are private and public DNS, VPN, these are very significant things. So make sure when you are getting into this domain, DevOps engineering role, you know about all these operating system, networking, security concepts. Then step number 5 is you should set up and be able to do the setup of all these, like how web servers operate, Apache, Tomcat, Caddy, either of these. Obviously, as a beginner, you are not supposed to know all of these tools, how all of these are used and everything, but at least you should have some experience with the web server, right? How reverse and forward proxy works, caching server, load balancer, and obviously, like as I covered there as well here in this roadmap cycle, that whenever you are learning the networking concepts, then firewall is It's very significant. So make sure you understand all about firewall, how it's used, what it is about the theory part, as well as these tools, the practical stuff like how to use Jenkins or any of these web server tools. These are very significant. Here is a tip: you can, if you want to understand the more about all these things, how web servers operate and all, you can follow these free courses and blogs, tutorials, whatever is written in the tip at the end of this slide. Moving ahead, number 6 is learn infrastructure as a code, and it includes all these significant pointers. You have to understand what containers are: Docker, Kubernetes, Apache, Mesos. These are literally very significant tools. Even if you work as a software engineer, somewhere later or sooner, if you are working on releases, some minor major releases for your team, for your organization, you have to use these tools like Jenkins or these container like Docker, Kubernetes. These are very useful in making things simpler, in deploying the applications. And configuration management tools like Ansible, Chef, Salt, Puppet, you will get to know all these once you get into the IT industry. But as a beginner, having a decent knowledge of what is container, what are configuration management tool, and if you know either of these, a bit of operational stuff like how this is used and all those things, that will do the work for you, okay? And infrastructure provisioning, for that Terraform, CloudFormation is heavily used. If you look here as well, so apart from like programming language, once you are done with the programming language, you have to understand the operating system concepts. This is from roadmap.sh, which is like heavily used by all the developers, all the software engineers out there, right? So this is a bit complex to understand, but I am trying to make it simple. That's why I'm covering all these steps here, like after networking and security concepts. You have to obviously start with programming language. This is step number 6, infrastructure as a code, which is written here as well. Like after operating system, you have to understand the networking, security protocols, and moving ahead, learn infrastructure as a code is the very next step. And when it's about infrastructure as a code, then obviously CI/CD tool, about which I talked in the beginning as well. That's a very core and significant part. Perfect. So I hope you are getting a bit of idea like what DevOps engineer profile is, the definition of it, and what steps are involved. I already covered 5 to 6 steps for the DevOps role. Similarly, like there are 4 to 5 more stuff involved, which I'll be telling you. So let's move ahead. We already have understood the infrastructure as a code part, and if you want to understand the more detailed stuff, so obviously like these are the pointers here. It might be a bit confusing in the beginning, but yeah, I mean that's why I've made the thing simple for you here. Understanding what tools are used for which one and which concept you should revise, learn if you are getting into this domain. Perfect. And one more significant thing, if you are going to deep dive into this domain of DevOps engineering, you should make sure that you are very comfortable with terminals, because running commands, running tests, automating stuff, these will be your day-to-day job. So it's important that you understand how to use terminal, what are the significant commands and everything. Awesome. Then step number 7, and it's very important, the CI/CD tools. How Jenkins, it's like most commonly used one, how Jenkins work. TeamCity, drones, Circle CI was also heavily used. And let me tell you, it's not just about DevOps engineers, even as a normal software engineer as well. If you are into the tech industry, in any team or any organization, while working on releases and all such a stuff, you should know how to write groovy scripts, how to write the job or pipeline, how if you have to make some task automated, or maybe have to do some stuff quickly, then obviously Jenkins pipeline, Jenkins job is one way to do that, right? It helps in doing this stuff very quickly. Let's say there are some tests which you have to every time in every release run, you have to manually copy paste some commands on terminal or something, so you can quickly create a Jenkins pipeline for that, right? And it's very simple if you know Groovy scripts and all those things. So let me tell you this thing also. In the programming language part, I didn't cover the Groovy scripts thingy, but obviously when you will be writing, when you will be using these tools like Jenkins and all, so Groovy scripts, normal scripting language and all, you should be well versed with those as well. Otherwise you can't really write the Jenkins pipeline and all those things quickly. Perfect. Moving ahead, the step number 7 is you should learn to monitor software and infrastructure. I already covered in the beginning. Even after the release, as a DevOps engineer, you are supposed to know how to monitor the health of the project. Let's say some crash reports are coming in, some errors are coming in the release or product, then you have to quickly fix it, right? You should know what are the tools and software used for monitoring the health of the project. These are some of the things which you can learn. Let's say if you have joined any organization as an intern or a fresher, so you can learn about these tools there as well. But it's recommended that if you are, let's say, going for an interview or something, you should have a basic idea of what tools are used for monitoring the softwares, products, and if you like know a bit of terms used in these applications or software, that's obviously cherry on the cake, right? And step number 9 is cloud providers. Obviously, as a DevOps engineer, if you are completely beginner also in the tech domain, you would have heard about these cloud providers like AWS, Alibaba Cloud, DigitalOcean, Linode, Azure. These are very popular ones, and not only DevOps engineer, the normal cloud consultants or software engineers, all those people also know and use these cloud providers. Whenever you have to deal with cloud, it's very significant that you should know how these cloud providers operate. So if you have worked with either of these cloud providers, indeed it's gonna help you a lot. Moving ahead, you can understand all these things, all the tools that you need to follow if you are getting into the this domain of DevOps engineering. You can follow this one as well. We'll try to put all these important links, the roadmap links, and all the documents, everything in our description. Do check out the description for that. So these are some of the cloud design patterns as well, but these are a bit advanced stuff, and if you are just a beginner getting started with DevOps, then what all 9 steps I covered, these are all good for you. If you understand all these things well, you can go ahead and start applying for DevOps role in any organization. And let me tell you, there is no any quick 20-day or 30-day roadmap in which you can learn all these things, because in these 9 steps, if you have like just watch these 9 steps, it will look like it's very easy, but trust me, when you deep dive into these things, networking concepts or learning the programming language, it will take some time, okay? And it's completely fine. It might take you 4 to 6 months to understand all the concepts in a very good manner if you are working on projects related to this domain. So I hope you have got a little bit of idea what tools you have to use, what are the important concepts. These 9 steps are the core steps you have to follow to get into this domain. Let's move ahead and talk about mobile application development. It's indeed one of the trending technologies, one of the 10 trending domains when we talk about tech and websites, applications, any such stuff. And let me tell you, it's an evergreen domain, because as a user, if you look at the reports, yearly reports of maybe Google App Play Store or App Store, the demand of and the use of applications is every month increasing rapidly. The percentage of people using the applications is really rapidly increasing. So as an application developer, you will never be out of demand. So this is one skill which you can learn and do a lot many stuff, from freelancing, open source contribution, participating in hackathons, or maybe just join any startup or an organization in their Android team. Perfect. So let's talk about mobile app development roadmap. There are mainly 3 types when it's about application development. So based on the operating system you use, let's say the number one is iOS, that is the operating system for the iPhones that we use, right? So if you use iPhones, then if you develop applications for iPhones, then you will be called as iOS developer, okay? And here in this case, you have to heavily use languages like Swift or Objective-C. These are the languages which you heavily use if you are into this domain of developing applications, apps for the iOS platform. If you develop applications for iPhones, that goes live on App Store, as in case of Android applications, it goes on Google Play Store, right? Moving ahead, if you want to develop applications for Android phones, then you are obviously known as the Android application developer. And the third one is like cross-platform application developer, cross-platform application developer. These are the three very important types when it's about mobile applications. As iOS developer, we already talked, you are developing applications for the apps that goes on App Store, right? As an Android app developer, you are heavily every day you will be using languages like Java or Kotlin. Java or Kotlin. We already have made a detailed video on this channel only, on Scalar's YouTube channel. We'll put the detailed link like how to get into this domain, mobile application development, why you should pick Java or Kotlin. You can watch that as well. Moving ahead, if it's about mobile application development, let me tell you 97% of the app developers are into Android development only. And then about cross-platform application development, if you want to write code once and that should work on like all the softwares, all the operating systems, for that one, cross-platform application development is the way to go. Here the technologies and frameworks like Dart, Flutter, React are heavily used. So when it's about application development, these three are very significant: iOS, Android, and cross-platform application development. Let's quickly check out what should be the ideal roadmap if you want to get into the domain. I will here cover the Android application development part, and there is detailed tutorial of developing a portfolio application, calculator application as well. After watching this roadmap of what are the steps involved if you want to become an Android developer, you can quickly watch those tutorials so that you get to build an application on yourself, right? So the very first thing, if you are getting into any domain, is you have to learn a programming language. In this one, Kotlin and Java are heavily used. Now it's a very commonly asked question, should you start with Kotlin or Java? I would say don't get confused. As a beginner, it's completely fine. Let's say if you know Java and you want to transition to Kotlin. In my second year of engineering, I very well knew Java because that was in syllabus as well. I did data structure, algorithm, all those stuff in Java. But I was very enthusiastic about developing mobile applications. On seeing those apps like Zomato, Amazon, I was very keen like how those applications are developed, and that's why I learned this skill, mobile application development. And trust me, as a developer being in tech domain, learning this skill was one of the best decisions that I took. Obviously, I mean there are other scopes as well, like getting into web development, machine learning, AI. That depends completely on your interest. So here you have to either go with Java or Kotlin. There are many features which are deprecated in Java, and nowadays all the companies as well, most of the projects in Android are getting transferred from Java to Kotlin. I was contributing to some of the open source projects as well, like that of anitaB.org, that is mentorship Android project, and MIFO's organization. And for those organizations, I was a mentor as well in Google Codin, where I was mentoring the pre-university students. So there as well, they had the mobile application development project, which was purely written in Java, but because now most of the teams, most of the projects, they are transferring themselves from Java to Kotlin. So that was happening in that project as well. So most of those issues, open source issues, were about making the task, making the feature from scratch from Java to Kotlin. And this is very easy to do. There are like in Android Studio itself, there are some quick features. If you want to convert your code from Java to Kotlin, you can easily do that. But having a decent knowledge of what Kotlin is, what are the basic syntax, it will indeed help you, and it's very clean and sweet code as compared to Java. In Java we write a lot of unnecessary code, I would say. Like as a software engineer, if you are writing some native software, then it's fine, you can there use Java, but when it's about Android applications, nowadays Kotlin is heavily used. After the programming language, these are some of the fundamental and core concepts. The very first thing, obviously, after learning the language that you would be doing is installing Android Studio. And one more thing, let me clarify, even if you don't know any programming language, let's say you are in first year of your college or second year, then also those tutorials which I have created on Portfolio app or Calculator app, I have covered basic stuff, and while writing the code I have explained very easily how to write the code as well. I mean, what are the keywords, where everything is there in detail. So even if you don't know a programming language, you can follow the tutorial, and side by side, like you can continue learning the programming language maybe after watching the tutorial, after understanding the basics how to develop an application. Okay. So this is installing Android Studio. After that, you have to learn the basics of Kotlin, basics of OOP. If you have learned C++, C, any programming language, because it's usually in the syllabus of technical degrees, right? What is OOP concept and all those stuff. Data structure algorithms is also very important if it's about mobile application development. For example, let's say you are developing a music application, right? You have to create a playlist of music. So if you don't know like how stack or queues work, how will you decide which data structure to use, right? So if you are in software development, if you are into app development, be it any application like for Android or iOS, any platform, a decent knowledge of data structure and algorithm. I'm not saying that you should be able to solve all the hard DP or graph problems. It's fine that if you have a decent knowledge of how things are done, if you know how to write code, how to write the solution for basic problems, medium level problems, that will do the work for you. Okay, so after data structure and algorithm, you should understand a bit of how to and what is Gradle. So if you have already followed that tutorial, I have explained, like in build.gradle, you have some of the files where you have to add third-party dependencies. Let's say if you have to beautify your application's UI, if you have to put onboarding feature, those in the beginning of the application, when you install any application, there are some scrolling kind of feature where they show that okay, these are the features in the application. If you have to put extra stuff like that, so third-party dependencies are needed. If you want to deal with REST APIs, how to fetch request, how to post request on APIs, REST APIs, then in that case also you will be using some of the third-party libraries like Retrofit is there, Volley is there. These are a bit advanced concept, and like in the beginning you don't have to worry much about Gradle builds and all those things. I would say just start learning any programming language, install the studio, explore it, explore the features. I have covered again those stuff in that tutorial, you can go and watch that. After these basic things are done, picking language and clarifying the fundamentals, knowing how to use Git and GitHub, or like instead of GitHub, many of the open source organizations use GitLab, Bitbucket, such repo hosting services as well. Here as well, to make things simple and easy for you, let's say if you have created any application or maybe any website, any project in general, and you want it to push on your GitHub profile, or maybe if there is already any project available and you want to add some feature there, all those things are very clearly covered in the Git and GitHub tutorial on this channel only. Again, we'll share all those details with you. In that, there are like all these steps, how you can push your project, or maybe if you want to contribute to anyone's project, how to make your open source contribution, your first pull request. All those things are very in detail covered. Perfect. So I would highly encourage, if you are in this domain, you are developing any application, any website, anything, it's good that you create your own developer portfolio. Developer website should be there, that is mostly GitHub. You should put all your projects, all your important stuff that you are creating, any interesting application, your first hello world application, that also you can put. That will indeed help you in excelling your tech career. Awesome. So here, like understanding how the version control system works and why you should use these things. These are some common stuff which might be asked in your interviews as well. Like if there is any general tech interview, you might be asked like, do you use GitHub? And if yes, then how these commands work or something like that. Because in most of the teams nowadays in the tech companies, they use GitHub as a team. Obviously, many software engineers are there in a team, senior, principal, lot many. So how you will manage code at a one place? You can't do like you write code in your machine, all other people are writing in theirs, and you can't. How will you put all the code at one place? For that, version control system, repo hosting service is indeed needed, right? So understanding these things are very basic and very important, I would say, when it's about app development, software development. Then to build an application, so let me tell you, there are multiple steps involved. There are many significant concepts like content providers, how to use intents, implicit, explicit intents, handling the app configuration, understanding the context, or third-party libraries like Glide is used for pictures mostly, retrofit, as I just said, retrofit, or Volley is used for fetching or giving requests to APIs. If you are dealing with APIs and all in advanced and complex applications, if you will start building, if you will deep dive into this domain, you will know how to get into these stuff like retrofit, how to manage APIs and all such stuff, Crashlytics, JSON. And in the beginning, when you are just getting started with app development, for backend, for managing the backend of your application, what you can do, you can use Firebase. That's easy to understand, and they have all the UI sorted. It will make you do the backend stuff very easily as compared to using the tabular, non-tabular, those like SQL, all those things in your application. Okay. And again, like understanding the activity life cycle is very significant if you are into this domain of developing applications for any platform. I would say how the application works, what's the life cycle involved. Whenever we develop software as well, general software, as a software engineer, we should know what's the software life cycle, right? So in the same way, for Android, there are activities life cycle, like which method should be called first, on create, on start, everything is there. So understanding all those things are very important. Apart from activities, fragments, and how to do debugging in Android Studio is another very significant part. Let's say you are facing issues around your application, like crashes are there in your apps, then to check that, you should indeed know how to read logcats, how to read the error reports. That will help you in quickly fixing the errors. These concepts like room, live data, data binding, work manager are a bit advanced and very core concepts of Android application development. So once you have done the basic stuff, you have done all these stuffs here, and you know about activities, fragments, how to use intents. Intents is the starting point of developing application. When you switch from one activity to another, intents are involved heavily. Okay. So apart from that, these advanced concepts will come after the basic ones. These live data, room, and JUnit, Dagger, Coin. These are even more advanced concept, like apart from work manager and all. These are very significant, I would say. Once you start your journey, these will come at the end when you are becoming, advanced app developer. Then you will automatically be learning all these things. To learn all these concepts, You can also check out those official documents which are available on the developer.android website. In detail, they have covered everything, like how to use work manager, what is the syntax involved. Let me clarify, you are not supposed to do rote learning of all the syntaxes. As you will continue developing software applications, Android applications, these concepts, recycler view, work manager, how to manage databases, how to manage the backend, all these things you will automatically learn. So don't do rote learning of any syntax, okay? And obviously, like, multi-threading is very significant when it's about Java, when it's about application development. When you have to do tasks simultaneously, then multi-threading concept is a very significant. So these are all the important concepts when it's about application development. You can follow these roadmap if you want to get into the domain of developing applications. And if you have any doubt, let's say you are following any path, you have started with language, tell all your doubts, anything, in the comment section below, and we will be happy to answer all your doubts around application development. If you are confused around language or how to get started with maybe Kotlin or any such thing, we will be answering them, okay? Moving ahead, the last profile that we are covering today is software engineering. Let me tell you, if you are getting into the software engineering domain, here as well, the very first step is learning a programming language. Now, as a software engineer, the industry standard languages like C++, Java, or maybe Python as well are heavily used. You can start with either of these. Don't waste time much on thinking which programming language should I start my career with. You can choose either of these. All are heavily used in the tech industry. And second step, once you are done with the programming language, understanding data structure algorithm is very significant. I already covered that in the second part as well. If you are learning how to develop softwares, how to write applications, Android, for any platform, knowing basics of data structure algorithm is indeed very significant if you are in this domain. To crack the interviews of the product-based companies, data structure and algorithm is heavily used and asked. After that, obviously, when you are going to apply in any company as an intern or maybe as a software engineer, you should have some projects in your resume, right? So for projects, there are multiple domains that you can explore. Maybe many students out there go deep into web development, or you can try out exploring mobile application development as well. Apart from that, machine learning, AI are also some of the domains in which you can try your hands and develop projects around that. So projects is next part. You have to work on some projects, some real world projects, and you can show them in your minor, major projects as well. Let's say if you are doing some technical degree, BTech, BSc, anything. So submitting project by the end of the graduation is indeed very important, right? So projects is the next step. And after that, if you are let's say following this roadmap of getting into the software engineering domain, software engineering industry, then exploring open source or participating in hackathons, technical events, freelancing, all those things are also some of the stuff that you can try for this, for the detailed thing, like how to get into hackathons, how to start participating, open source. We already have detailed video on this channel only, so you can check out that. So I have covered 3 important programming profiles: DevOps, application development, and finally software engineering in this video. I hope you got a bit of idea of what is the roadmap, what are the steps involved for each one of these. If you love this video, make sure you hit the like button and subscribe to our channel. For any doubts, put them in the comment section below and we will be happy to answer them. See you all next time.